Bay training series. My name is Brian. I am the business development manager at Bay Center. And with me tonight will be Kamal, who I will introduce momentarily. Kamal is the COO, or Kamal Dalmia. Am I pronouncing that right, Kamal Dalmia?
Yes, absolutely.
Great, awesome.
Thanks,
So
Brad.
Kamal is the COO of Aviva Links. But before we get to him, I want to again welcome everybody to the Bay training series. This is an ongoing series of videos where we interview entrepreneurs, educators, and people who have experience in the life science industry or just generally startup founders, people who can give us people who are looking to start businesses ourselves insight to what it takes in order to excel, scale, and grow rapidly on an international level. Bay Center is a 112,000 square foot facility that helps accelerate businesses. We have over 20 suites. We have 15 biolabs, BSL2 biolabs. We have an event center. At the end of the show, I'll give you information on how you can contact us if you're interested in hosting an event, getting a suite, getting a designated desk, utilizing the facility, and even being a part of our accelerator program. Our incubator has a lot to offer those who are looking to scale on an international level. We provide the resources and the network to do so. So without further ado, I would like to introduce tonight's guest, Kamal Dalmia. Kamal is a serial entrepreneur with a proven track record of building new businesses. His career spans 25 years in connectivity chip space. Currently, he is the co-founder and COO of Aviva, a vehicle connectivity company. Prior to Aviva, he was founder and CEO of Drive, another startup in automotive connectivity space. He was part of the executive team at Aquatia. Am I saying that right? How do I say that?
Quantia?
Quantia. Okay. All right. A well-known startup and one of the few semiconductor IPOs in recent years. He has also held business and engineering roles at Marvell, Cypress, and PMC Sierra. He invented NBASE-T technology, which is now widely used as a backbone in enterprise Wi-Fi networking, and he also served as president of the NBASE-T Alliance, and an organization of 50 plus companies. He is a prolific inventor and holds 30 patents. That's pretty good. Kamal, good job. His work has led to multiple worldwide IEEE standards in wired connectivity. You've done a lot, Kamal. Thank you for showing up today and giving us some insight. What we're really going to do today is just kind of have a fireside chat of your experience over the last 20 plus years in the industry. So I'm excited to dive in because we were in the green room yesterday chatting it up, and we almost just let loose with all the energy. So we saved it for today. But thank you so much for being here. How are things going at Aviva?
Things are going great. Before that, first of all, thanks for having me over. It's a pleasure to be part of this initiative, and happy to provide whatever insights I can and share my experiences.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited. Like I said, we were chatting yesterday, and we were just doing a deep dive. I'm curious, and so are everyone who is listening on YouTube and here on Zoom, and those who are going to listen in the future. Give us an elevator pitch on what is Aviva. I know you guys are still in that startup phase, so give us a little insight.
Absolutely. We are still very much in stealth mode, being a 7-month-old company. But as you mentioned, we are a chip company. We're a semiconductor company in automotive connectivity space. We're essentially building the next generation solutions to enable self-driving cars. So the modern cars have a lot of electronics that goes in the cars for the purpose of either enhancing the driver experience, safety systems, or self-driving systems, or infotainment systems, infotainment being your cockpit experience. So we play a role in moving data within the cars for the purpose of these applications.
Nice. Now, this is not your first run in this space, is that correct?
That's right. So I've been working in automotive space for some time, but as far as startups concerned, this is my second startup in automotive connectivity space. Prior to Aviva, I did a company called Drive, which was in the same space.
So tell us a little about Drive. That was your first go around. What worked well there, and how are you bringing that experience into Aviva?
Sure. Yeah. So when we did Drive, it was about 3 years ago. And at that time, the vehicle industry transformation was at a very early stage. So we were one of the early guys to address this problem. So we did quite well for an early stage startup. The company actually had a pretty quick exit. We exited within 1 year, which is quite unprecedented for chip companies, hardware space. But we're essentially now, continuing to work in the connectivity space at Aviva.
So Aviva, this technology, why now? What does the future hold that has attracted you to this space?
Sure. Yeah. So basically, this is kind of a culmination of our analysis of this space over the last several years. So we continue to closely watch the space and continue to see that the solutions that exist in the market are not really adequate to serve the needs of where the industry wants to go. To give you an example, essentially what's happening in the automotive space is the cars are putting more and more advanced sensors into the vehicle. So for example, Tesla ships with 9 cameras today. So it may not be quite apparent, but that's the level of sophistication these cars have. Going forward, the resolution, the performance of these cameras and sensors will continue to increase. And the connectivity that's required to support that advancement doesn't really exist in the market today. So that's where we come in. That's the problem we solve.
That's an ambitious quest. You just got going in September, but you are a tenant at Cubase. I've watched you guys grow rapidly. You are very efficient in what you do. I have no doubt you're going to accomplish your ambitious goals. How is it unfolding in this early stage for you? How are you getting things in line so quickly and moving forward as you are?
Sure. Yeah. As you mentioned, we kind of started the journey in September timeframe. Officially started the company in November, moved into Cubase in December, and we've been running hard since then. Things came together rather quickly this time around. I guess partly that's function of having done this before. So each time we do this, we get better at it, learn from the experience in the past. It's also a big function of the team we were able to put together in the early days. So essentially, startups, when we start day one, it's nothing but few people who get together and say, let's form a company together. So on day one, nothing exists except for the team. So it's the team that then is what pulls everything together in terms of investors, space, customers. So we were very, very fortunate to have put a very strong team together. So we are 4 co-founders, and that has been a key part of how we've gotten going that quickly.
So, I mentioned to you yesterday, and you mentioned today that you're still in stealth mode. Things are still, I'm super curious. I don't know if you want to go there, but I'm super curious. This sounds like a big undertaking in gathering data, but more importantly, for those who are listening and really want to be as efficient as you are and your team is, what are some of the first moves? Any entrepreneur who is looking to make big leaps has a lot on their plate. How did you organize this team? How did you bring together this idea to move so rapidly in like, what is it, 8 months already, and already get the momentum that you're having?
Yeah. So, first of all, you want to look for going back to the team, a team that complements each other, right? Where the members complement each other. So it's critical to identify what would make a good team for a certain application. If for the type of problem we solve, we look for certain expertise that's needed to properly solve the problem. So first step is to put that founding team together, because without that, really nothing starts properly. So that's what we did. We, with our knowledge of the space, made sure we have the right set of expertise. And from there on, you basically go about various things. Funding is the next big step, right? So once you've put the team together, you have, of course, an idea already in place that you all want to work on. So once you have those two things, then you, of course, look for seed investors. A little bit difference perhaps in the software space. Software space, founders can start writing the code themselves and then go look for seed. We are in the hardware space, so for us, it's more important to look for seed before even we have any code written. So that's a slight difference between hardware and software startups. In our case, with the reputation and the track record we have, we were very lucky to have investors from day one.
So you built a social capital before you came in. Were you able to move at this speed during your Drive years?
No, Drive was certainly slower than this, right? So as we go forward, we build more of a track record, then things get better, easier, frankly. So Drive, it took us a little bit longer, but not much longer, because before Drive, I had already done a Quantia, which we had taken IPO in 2017 and started Drive in 2018. So built upon that experience, but it took a little bit longer than Aviva.
Yeah, I can. So what did that process look like in your early years? So let's go back to Marvel, because what I'm really trying to unpack here for people who get stuck in that launching stage is sometimes they put the cart before the horse, right? They step over themselves. They got a great idea. They don't put the right team together. They don't do things in the right order. They're not efficient. And what you've been able to do in just under a year, it could take people 5 years. And so your team, tell me a little bit about the relationship that you have with your team members. Where did you meet them? How did you figure out that they were a right fit moving forward? Because this is not the first time you've worked with them. Is that correct?
That's right. And, we were talking yesterday a little bit about this. It's very, very critical to have the right team, but then how do you know you have the right team is by having worked with them previously. So it's, essentially putting a team together for a startup is somewhat analogous to getting married, right? You're going to spend a lot of time together. And, in a marriage, two people can sometimes agree and disagree. So it's naturally what's going to happen between human beings, that you may disagree with your team members. So you need to have that level of understanding on day one, that if there is a disagreement, that you are all going to sort it out as a team. So otherwise, it will frankly start to fall apart, because two people getting together and agreeing on everything is hard. 3 gets much harder. 4 is exponentially harder than 3, and then off it goes. So it would be very, very rare to have, say, 5 co-founders in a startup. So some startups, of course, many startups would have 2 co-founders, some would have 3, some would have 4. The type of stuff we do is quite multifaceted. So we needed to have 4 co-founders. So we actually went to great length to make sure all 4 are mentally aligned and have the same vision and have the attitude to be able to pull this off. So that's absolutely critical for any founders that are out there trying to build a business, is to make sure that you really are picking the teammates not only based on skill set, complementary skill set, but also the personality match. And one of the key things that VCs would look for when it's time for you to go raise the money is whether the founders have worked together in the past or not. And the reason they do that is because they've seen it from experience that unless people have worked together in the past and just happen to get together to form a new company, then chances are that that there would be more disagreements than you would like to have, and can create problems down the road. So that's kind of a check mark.
That's super interesting to me. So how do you figure out what your blind spots are? I mean, you come up with this idea and you have a short list of people you've worked with before. Maybe you have a long list, I don't know, and you kind of pick your team. But the fact that VCs are looking for these interpersonal skills, aside from a good idea, the vision of the product, the numbers, this idea that, do you play nice together? How, you're working, in your space, you have a lot of engineers. How do you really kind of split that insight of having that hard skill understanding? Obviously, you're super smart. I've had amazing conversations with you, but you're also incredibly people-oriented. Finding that balance traditionally, I don't mean to put engineers in a box here, right? That's an incredible combination to bring that in. How do you manage that?
Yeah, I mean, that's something you really have to pay attention to. Of course, each person has their own personality. Oftentimes, what you find in a startup is there is a technical co-founder who's more on the technical side, and then there's another person who's more on the people side, perhaps, or the business side of things. So that's another way to do it is, if it's a very technically intensive problem, it's perfectly okay to have a super technical CTO for perhaps who's not necessarily a people's person. But the key is for the founders to be able to work together. And going back to VCs, essentially it becomes quite apparent when you go into a VC meeting, they will be able to see the chemistry between the founders. And that chemistry between the founders is more important than having, say, for example, having to have CTO have people skills. That's not so important. It's much more important to have the CTO and the CEO getting along.
Right. I love that. And I just want to remind our audience that is in attendance, if you have questions, please feel free to put your questions in the message section down there, and we'll ask Kamal as we kind of move forward in this conversation. Just to kind of shift gears a little bit away from people skills, I'm curious, in the first year, 1, 2, 3 years in the startup phase, how do you define success in that journey, in that early stages?
Sure. So it varies a little bit by whether the nature of the company. So software companies are a little bit different than, say, deep tech or hardware companies. Software companies have certain well-defined metrics of users, eyeballs, revenue, and so on. Deep tech is a little bit different. That's the space we come from. In the deep tech space, you don't necessarily have revenue off the bat. So you're building the product for a while. So most of the milestones are product development related milestones, right? Ability to put the team together and ability to execute on products is what you focus on, especially your first year. So end of first year would be a key checkpoint to say whether you've really been able to develop the product to a substantial level. So, and then second year, typically you would focus on making sure you're lining up customers. Of course, some companies would do it faster than others. In our case, we're able to get customer traction much earlier on than typically would be the case. But typically, it would be your second year as a hardware startup that focus on getting customers. And then third year onwards, you're basically getting into revenue phase. So those are the three key things that would define your success, right? The product development, customer acquisition, and then actual revenue.
To a first-time entrepreneur, startups, I think in your wisdom, you're sharing something that we can't go by very quickly here. You're saying that the focus on the customer comes in year 2. I think a lot of the cart before the horse thinking is I have to have customers now. Are you saying right now, no, that product, I may be stating the obvious to some, but this could be a hidden gem for many. You're saying that you're giving yourself a year ramp up time before you even start making that customer experience relevant at the table. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there are two parts to the customer equation, if you will. So I'll elaborate a little bit here. Um, so one thing is, if you're doing a startup, you probably spent few years in that space already. That gives you the confidence to do a startup in that space, which means you have had some knowledge of what the customers are looking for or what the problems that they're facing in that space. So which means that you've already studied the problem to a certain extent. You understand the problems that your customers are facing, and you aren't really going to go ask your customers what is the problem, because if you're doing that, that means you didn't really study it before you started. So with that presumption, you're really ready to say, I believe I have the solution for the problem the customers are facing, and it's the solution that others don't have, so hence I'm going to go build it. So you have that leap of faith that you're going to go build that product based on. And oftentimes you're not going to want to reveal that solution to the customers, because the word spreads, and there is certain value in being in a stealth mode for some time while you're developing that. So what you would do is you would selectively talk to some perhaps trusted customers during this phase where you're fine tuning your solution, but not really widely trying to sell it, because you're not quite ready for that yet. It would be premature to do that. So, so, so what that means is, you do some selective customer engagements, but not really selling widely in the first year while you're making the product. Once you made the product, now you're ready to go wide. So that's kind of what I alluded to as the second year, right? Or whenever the product happens to be ready. It could be 9 months, it could be 6 months.
What are some of the so you're talking about in the second year, the engagement as that takes place. Why would it be too premature to engage customers too early? What are some of the things that could happen to the product or service of the company if it's too early?
So customers, whether they want to or not, or they choose to or not, end up kind of talking to other vendors. So they would naturally tend to leak, if you will. So even if it's not conscious, they would be unconscious leaks, because vendors are knocking on customers' doors all the time. So if you go in, you propose a solution, it clicks a bell, they start asking other vendors, hey, why aren't you doing this? And that gets them going faster than they would have. So you have this time element that you really need to capitalize on, right? It's the surprise element, whereby you build something better than the other guy. And so other guys would never find out about your stuff, generally speaking. Or two ways they find out is either through customers or through, say, hiring network potentially. But it's really through the customers that your data leaks.
Got it. So let me kind of bring this all together. The first two parts of these questions I talked together at now. So we generally talked about how you define success, what the first 3 years look like. As the COO at this stage, what does your day look like?
So as a CEO, I wear many hats. My day is quite chaotic. I'm changing priorities and focus throughout the day. I do 6 different things in any given day. Sometimes it's the HR functions where we're constantly hiring. So we're hiring at the rate of 2 or 3 a week sometimes. So that is quite a bit of work. Sometimes it's the financial activity. So it could be HR functions, it could be finance functions, it could be customer engagement, it could be engineering development, working on the product definition, and it could be investor engagement. So my particular day, I wear 6 hats in any given day.
You're going nonstop and you feel like you get nothing done. Is that kind of like what the feeling?
No, that would not be the right thing. Just juggling and making sure things get done is how we would look at it, right?
I'm fascinated. I say that jokingly. It's almost like, yeah, you're doing so many things. The next thing pops up, switching hats. So I say that jokingly. But how do you manage the pivot? And what I mean by that is you know, at Cubase here, we have a lot of tenants, we have a lot of responsibility, we have a very small, fast, smart team ourselves, but we're constantly pivoting from, you know, the linear work, the paperwork, the numbers, to being creative. We're bouncing around to different tasks. And you're doing the same thing a few doors over with another. How do you manage that? Because people who pivot a lot go, you know, from one task to another. That's how you get worn down really quick. How do you take care of yourself?
Yeah, so you know, of course, you need to be mentally and physically prepared. Physical well-being plays a big role in the mental well-being. So, as you know, we have a great gym at Cube. So I make sure to take full advantage of that.
See you
Work
there.
out almost every day. You know, taking the time to do the workout helps keep the mental balance, and then we use that mental balance and the training we do to ourselves over the years to make sure we are able to juggle these balls in an efficient manner.
Yeah, I think that's overlooked by a lot of people, that you do need to have a balanced lifestyle in order to, you know, be sustainable through this. I have a question that came in from somebody watching. They said, do you have any advice for early stage startup founders or people who are still thinking about founding a startup?
Yeah, so as we talked earlier, right, the first step of starting a startup is the founding team. Number one, of course, you presumably you already have an idea, right, on what you would like to do a startup on. So, assuming you have the idea, that's like first stage. Right after that, the first stage is really focus on the founding team. Um, Oftentimes, smart people would tend to think idea and me are enough. No, it's never one person. It's always a team, and that so focus on the team. Once you've put together a founding team that's suitable for your space, because it really depends on how multifaceted your problem statement is. Sometimes it needs 2 or 3 different skill sets to solve a problem. So having a founder that specializes in each skill set would be critical to have a good founding team. And then once you have that good founding team and all the founders are aligned on the vision and have the personality match, if you will, which comes from, you know, having worked together most of the time. It would be rare that you get that without having worked together. So that's pretty important. Then you go on to working out your business plan, and that really depends on the space you're in. You know, software, you could start writing the code without having to go to investors. Otherwise, you know, you may want to reach out to some seed investors after you've done that basic work, and then go from there.
That's great. I want to circle back to something you said. A lot of smart people will think idea and me. Do you think that there are a lot of lone wolf mentalities out there that hold back a great company?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think that can play a big role, because by definition, if you're adventurous enough to say I'm going to do a startup, which means you're, you know, presumably pretty smart, and with that smartness, you could have that me mentality. But you really need to be cognizant that it's a team.
So there's a question here. I'm going to make it a hybrid. Someone asked, could you tell us something that most people don't know about you? What's the last thing you laughed about?
I don't remember today, but you know, I so I actually don't remember.
What makes you laugh? What?
Oh,
Yeah, what
what
makes you laugh?
makes yeah. So you know, I love good jokes. So I do actually go read jokes and love to laugh on my own. um, you know, sometimes we laugh just at the sequence of events that take place during any given day,
Yeah.
because startups are a roller coaster. You know, when in a larger startup, things change on a daily basis. in a smaller startup, they change on an hourly basis. So we look back and laugh, say, here we go again, right? So,
I love
and
it.
that gives us the energy to keep going.
That's great. I love that stuff. So when you're not, here at Cubase, or you're not wearing the multiple hats and have your nose to the grindstone, what do you do with your free time? How do you escape this all?
Yeah, so getting out there in fresh air is I think pretty important. It's very important to me. So of course we do some workout at the gym, but I make sure to go out, spend time outdoors, whether and depending on people, they may have different ways of spending time outdoors. But for me, sometimes walking, sometimes biking, sometimes hiking. So combination of those things.
Nice, nice. Okay, let me dive back into some good questions. So you were at Marvell for quite some time. Now, when you were there, did you see yourself becoming an entrepreneur, or did you see yourself um, as a role player on a larger team? What was that moment where you said, "I can do this"?
Yeah, so that came a few years into the, professional world. So, but early on, I kind of had this instinct that I'm going to be an entrepreneur, and it was kind of a little bit weird that people had started asking me, "Why aren't you doing your company?" So, so I had that inclination, but somehow it started to become apparent to others.
So
That
they were validating there was some quality about you, that you have leadership, you have great ideas, you're innovative, and you started to go, I can do this. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Who were some of your mentors as you made that transition from the corporate world into entrepreneurship, startup world? Did you have some mentors, coaches, friends that kind of whispered in your ear and say, "Hey, go this way, go that way"? And how important was that?
Yeah, so early on in my career, I had mentors. I actually happened to work with one of the um, early people in semiconductor space. Many people who are in semiconductor might know that the person by the name of Jack Kilby invented semiconductors back in Texas at Texas Instruments company. So I worked for a person who directly worked for Jack Kilby. So he was my mentor in the early days. But as when years went by, then basically had a little less of direct mentorship, but started to pull from the experiences all around me. Sometimes it's from people say I worked for or worked with, or people who worked say for me. So you basically learn from everyone is the theme.
Right. So one of our attendees has asked, what are some of the hurdles that you have encountered in growing, scaling your companies? How have you overcome them?
Sure. So typically in a startup, I think my personal opinion, the biggest hurdle is actually the formation of the market. Um, because typically what you're trying to do is do something new, and the question becomes, is the market really ready for that? So something, whatever that new thing is, because generally there is an incumbent solution in place, right? Almost every problem has a solution, and more likely than not it can be improved upon. It's non-optimal. The question is how revolutionary a change you're trying to bring, and the more revolutionary a change, the more time it could take for the market to develop. So that's most of the time that turns out to be the big hurdle. So getting the timing right, pacing the effort, you could get ahead of yourself. You could have too many people spend too much money, and then market not be ready. You essentially be ahead of the curve too much, whereby the market is not ready. or you could be sometimes behind the curve, right? So getting the timing right is the most critical aspect of success. You really have to know that the market is ready for the solution or will be ready soon.
That makes sense. I've heard so much about market fit, and I'm assuming you had to pivot at some point. You've had to adjust in your early years of entrepreneurship. What did that look like for you? What was your thinking in terms, and again, not to get too specific about a product, but how do you absorb that data coming in about the market and then shifting your product or a particular strategy? Is it too early? Is it, what does that look like?
Sure. Yeah. So in one of the early startups, that did happen. We built a certain product. It had a certain market acceptance, so that kept us going. And in that particular case, what happened was the product actually had reasonable success. So that led us to believe that the big success is coming soon. So we went on for a little while. So it was not a complete. If it were a complete dud, you would know right away. The difficult situation is when you have some success and the big success seems imminent. So that causes you to go on for some time, but then there's you have to continue to ask yourself, well, wait a minute, have I spent enough time? This big success should have come by now. Is it really coming? So ask yourself, don't drink your own Kool-Aid, essentially, right? So because we repeat our thesis so much that we start believing it. So you have to step back and say, question yourself, right? Say, is my thesis really true? And if, especially when things are not really happening the way you anticipate them to be happening, then you say, objectively look at what has caused this to happen. And once you do that analysis, then you step back and say, what adjustment do I need to do to make it the big success that was intended? So we did that very effectively. We were able to, pivot in one of the startups. Not pivot, we actually ended up keeping the original product line and added to it with a new product line that was a derivative. So wouldn't call it a pivot. Pivot would be, when you completely change your plans. We were able to leverage the technology, the base technology we had developed, but apply it to a different space rather quickly. And that created the big success, not the original plan.
We had to have a smart team to kind of figure out what that new strategy was going to be. But I would assume in that process, it was difficult to let go. So the follow-up question is, do you have some sort of, you talked about, exercising is important, but do you have a particular way of preparing your mind to make those types of shifts? Because again, you're moving so quickly with Aviva, you're getting traction, you have this experience. So I'm leaning in here. Is there some insight in that particular area that helps you shift so quickly to get back to the design type thinking and trying something new?
I wouldn't say that there is a specific formula, if you will. I think this comes from constantly thinking about the situation, analyzing the situation properly. So sometimes people would say that, I had a aha moment, or I had the epiphany, and, it occurred to me type of thing. But realistically, what happens is you're thinking about something, thinking about the problem on an ongoing basis. It's in the back of your mind. That's your subconscious. And if you think about it long enough, then and put enough pieces of the puzzle together, that's when you get that aha moment. So, and that's when you realize you need to change, right? So it's a process. You really have to go analyze the situation for some time.
Yeah, that creative process, it fascinates me how when you're constantly thinking about it, or because I'm going to ask you about your passion, like what gives you your passion that has you thinking about delivering on this particular product, that the creative juices are always flowing, the willingness to test the product, to throw yourself into the fray and see what comes out. Well, where does that passion come from? Why passion in this particular space?
Yeah, so in general, I guess where the passion comes from I think that's somewhat of a DNA type situation, right? Some people are just programmed that way, where they like to analyze problems and work on problems, and kind of have this innovative spirit, if you will. So that I don't know, but I guess that's probably not a learned skill. That's something you grow up with.
What about, okay, I totally get that. Makes sense. I love sports. I love emotional intelligence. I love people. Why this space for you? Why Aviva? Why Drive? Why not building airplanes?
Mm-hmm.
That may be next. I don't know.
Yeah, no. That's a very valid question. So basically, so this is a sort of a result of an evolution, if you will. So I'll walk you through that rather quickly and to give you an idea. So fundamentally, I was fascinated by chips, semiconductors from very early on, right? So that is the root of it. Just wanted to be in the chip space no matter what. So that got me into the chip space. Once I got into the chip space, I happened to work for PMC Sierra in the early days, and they were working on connectivity, and that seemed like a really, really cool application, moving bits at a very fast speed. So that got me into general connectivity space. Then from there on, kept looking at a problem area in that period of time. So for example, many years ago, enterprise connectivity, your desktop, your PC connectivity used to be the big problem. We all used to have Ethernet before Wi-Fi became a real thing to our PCs. So we worked on that for many years and developed this connectivity skill set. Then the problem shifted to data centers when everything started to move to cloud, right? The high-speed connectivity problem moved to the cloud. So we shifted from PCs to cloud and started addressing those applications in terms of finding solutions for that. And once that kind of brought under control, which was about a few years ago, like 6 or 7 years ago, that's when automotive cars started to show up on the radar. Automotive customers started to talk about them facing this problem of moving high-speed data within the cars. Because up until then, cars were really rather primitive. We think of them as, fairly advanced machines. But when it comes to electronics, they're actually rather primitive. They used really, really old style electronics that are kind of obsolete in other areas. Mm-hmm. So we said, well, we have this expertise from connectivity in other areas. Automotive will need these type of expertise. So we did what we call a domain translation from enterprise and data center connectivity into automotive. So that's what led us to basically go after automotive, essentially because the problem was becoming apparent.
Interesting. So, I mean, some people may stumble across, something that they are passionate about, but you from an early age says, no, I need to be in this space. And you've dedicated your professional and almost a majority of your personal life to this particular space. And that's where the innovation comes from. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, as they say, right, innovation could be 99% perspiration, 1% inspiration. So there is definitely a lot of perspiration that goes into it, which is, we can call it the experience. So you got to have the innovative spirit, but you also have to have the experience to back it up.
Right. Another question that keeps coming in, it's funny, there's been a few around this, is I'm going to rephrase it, is how do you stay up? It's not so much about exercise, but keeping the innovation high, keeping the organization high, keeping the energy high, keeping that level without getting burnout. How do you manage that?
Yeah. So basically, there are several elements that go into it. Essentially, what we do is, so first of all, we start with the right mindset, right? We go in with the mindset that this is going to be hard, this is going to have ups and downs, so that when the downs hit, you don't get overly dejected and then take you down a spiral, right? So that's a big part of it, is you yourself being mentally prepared. Once you are mentally prepared as founders, then you basically end up exuding a certain energy to the rest of the team. And that energy, the exuding that positivity and that energy, is super important for a startup, because the team is going to draw from what they see you. If you're dejected, the team will be dejected, right? It starts to form a culture of the company. So to keep the whole momentum, the positivity around you, you basically yourself have to make sure, even in the face of adversity, you remain strong, you remain positive. Don't let things pull you down, and that will then help pull the rest of the team up, and then collectively you rise.
I love that. No wonder they were saying you were cut for this early. It's that type of insight right there, I think is huge, because people will go into a lot of tasks in life. I mean, you go anything from a startup to personal relationship with the set expectations, but you essentially, what I'm hearing you say, are saying all things are possible and I'm going to be ready, the ups and downs, and I'm not going to ebb and flow with the up and downs. I'm just going to stay the course. Give me, if you were writing a book on values, right, as a entrepreneur or founder, what would be your top 3 values that a founder needs in order to be successful?
Sure. So, basically, I talked about adversity. So people talk about IQ. IQ is intelligent quotient. You want to think about adversity quotient. You got to have a high adversity quotient, which basically, I would define as the ability to deal with adversity, because startups are tough. There's no doubt about it. If they weren't tough, you wouldn't be creating enough value. By definition, easy things don't create value. So when you're doing tough things, there would be ups and downs. The ability to deal with them is paramount. And then there are many other givens, right? The experience in the space, and knowledge of the space, and knowledge of the customers, and knowledge of the problem. Those are all given, but we're talking, attributes, personal attributes, if you will. The second thing is basically integrity, right? So what people will find over time is this is perhaps a cliche, but it's all about who you know or who you're able to work with, meaning it's a network of people. You're going to have to pull a lot from the people around you, whether you're teammates or investors or ecosystem players or partners. So there's a whole bunch of people who play a role, right? It takes a village to raise a startup. So now you got to have integrity to earn the trust of the village. People work with people who they trust. So and that trust comes from integrity. If people can sense integrity, so that's super important. That plays a big role in success, because that's what will cause people to work with you, to trust you. And then other than that, we talked about this positivity, right? Gotta stay positive in the sense, of course, have the strength to face the challenges. That's the adversity. But then there is this, how does positivity differ from that adversity, is how you behave with other people. So, keeping the team positive, always having a smile, if you will, on your face is key. When you walk into the room, you want to have this uplifting persona, which is key to get the team going.
I love that. I mean, you've talked about building a team, you've talked about passion, you've talked about just the idea in me mindset that limits people, and now you're talking about the adversity quotient, integrity, and positivity. That's gold. And when you're looking to hire staff, now that you guys are expanding so quickly, I mean, you had your core four, you guys first got here, the room was like half full, but now you guys are looking to expand possibly more space. You're growing very quickly. When you're hiring and you're expanding beyond that core four team, you're obviously looking for the intellectual capacity to do the job, but what other things are you looking for in terms of continuing this momentum in the direction that you're talking about? Building culture.
Yeah, absolutely. So the attributes, the elements we talked about, of course, the founders need to have that in spades. But we also look for the same thing in the team, because team is the extension of the founders or the founding team, right? So they need to have the same attributes. So yeah, personality match is a key part of what we look for when we're looking to build the team up.
Wow, I like it. You have your hands full there. So if you were writing a book, here's a general fun question. If you were writing a book and the third chapter was your 5 tips on a successful journey through entrepreneurship, what would be your 5 tips?
Yeah, so potentially hard to recite 5 in that order, but the
Yeah.
general ideas I think we've shared, right? Is basically make sure to focus on the timing of the product you're trying to build. Make sure it's the right timing. Make sure it's the right team. Make sure you have lined up or have talked to at least some investors before you quit your job. One very, very important tip: talk to some investors before you quit, because they'll give you the third party perspective, help you put things in perspective, because sort of along the lines of drinking your own Kool-Aid, if you will, right? It's easy to some investors will tell you all entrepreneurs love their own idea, right? So you want to make sure somebody else also loves your idea, not just you yourself.
I love that. Right.
So,
all right.
So talk to some angels, some investors before you quit your job, and then the rest of the attributes. Make sure then the rest of the ecosystem you're talking to and all.
I love it. I love it. So my final question, we've got a couple more and we're getting close to the end here. So I told you I was going to ask you this as my last question, but ultimately with everything that we've talked about, again, we didn't get too much into the details of the company, but I get a front row seat to watching you guys grow. What you're doing is really exciting. I love your team. So I'm excited. I'm glad I get to watch. But at the end of the day, at the end of this journey, whether it's when you go home at night or even when you look back on your life, at the end of this journey, what will give you the biggest sense of fulfillment?
Sure. So yeah, in this case, right, the problem we're solving or addressing literally saves lives, right? So we're going to make a difference. So at the end of the day, the broad picture would be what we derive satisfaction with. So we made a difference in the world. We made the world a better place. Now, drilling one step down, what that means in our context is we actually made the cars safer, whereby we save lives. So to give you a little bit more context, if you will. So for example, your car now has a emergency braking, automated emergency braking, right? Humans will get distracted. If the car was able to brake and save one pedestrian, that's what it's all about, essentially making a difference in people's lives, right? So almost all things we do eventually have that end goal.
Well, I love it. So it's all about just improving the human experience. That's kind of the legacy that you're after, and if you accomplish that goal, that's what gives you. But I really have to say that personally knowing you, you are a life changer. Like just the way that you carry yourself, the way that you talk, the way that you engage with people. I love people who love people, and you're no doubt one of those people who just make things greater around here. So I'm so thankful for you. I want to throw one more question at you from our audience. What will you do if Aviva goes public in a certain amount of years? Will you begin another startup after this?
So going public is, previous company when we went public, we actually looked at each other and said, this is actually the start. So, because there's always so much work ahead of you. Going public is a big milestone, but when you go public, you realize, wait a minute, there's a ton more work ahead of us. So, for example, Google went public in whatever year, right? 15, 20 years ago. It's not like they all checked out and retired. They continue to build for many, many years after that. Same for any good company you look at, right? It's Facebook, Amazon, they are, because what you realize when you get there is, wait a minute, there's a lot more work left.
Yeah, whole nother level. Well,
Yeah.
Kamal, I want to thank you again for joining us today. It's been a privilege. For all of you who are watching, if you want to double back and take some more notes on Kamal's insight, this will be up on our YouTube channel. You can go to cubate.com and find more information there about Cubate itself. We'll have more events like this. Kamal, can people find you on LinkedIn?
Absolutely. Yeah. Just look for my name. It's not a very common name, so you should not have much trouble finding me. Just look for my name and Aviva, and you'll find me rather easily.
Okay. So Aviva is on LinkedIn as well?
Yes, we are.
Awesome. So those of you who want to follow Kamal and Aviva, and trust me, if you want to see a successful individual and a successful company come about in the next few years, and geez, the pace that you guys are going, it might be in a lot shorter term than that. Follow them on LinkedIn. It's Aviva, @Aviva on LinkedIn. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Aviva Links.
Aviva Links on LinkedIn. Aviva Links on LinkedIn. Once again, Kamal, thank you so much. I'm sure I'll see you on campus many, many times, but thank you for joining us today. Really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Enjoyed the conversation a lot, and hopefully benefit the listeners out there.
I'm sure it did. All right. Kamal, and to everyone who watched today, have a great night, and thanks again for joining us. Stay tuned for more Cubate training series in the months to come. See you soon.
All right. Thank you.